Hi everyone, welcome back to OCD Recovery. I wanted to continue my OCD story video part 2 now and pick up where we left off on the last video. So I'm linking down the first part in the description below if you want to watch that part as well. So this is where my OCD story took like a very significant kind of turn. So as I said at the end of my last video, when I was 14 years old, there was a sexual trauma event that happened in my life, and that's where things started to really go for a spin a little bit in that sense. And so, as I mentioned in the previous video, I had been experiencing as a child, even before that, there were there were issues with like guilt and shame that I was struggling with. There were issues with, oh, am I a bad person? Am I a good person? I want to be like a nice, neat, clean, good person all the time, and that's the image that I wanted others to see as well of me. So I was very conscious of how I portrayed myself and what others thought of me. And I wanted to make sure that nobody had the wrong impression about me or nobody had like the misinterpreted version about me, right? So with all of that background already existing, I have my notes on the side, that's why I'm looking on the side. With all that in the background, in like my already in my history in that way, this particular event at the age of 14 kind of amplified that even more, and so the chronic guilt and shame came about even more. And for me, in my like little self brain, that was kind of confirmation. That was absolute confirmation. It was a stamp on the fact that yes, indeed, I am a bad person, because at the time I didn't like realize what had happened and like what I had experienced, what I had gone through. So for me, how I at that time, with little awareness and information, how I understood that event was that it's something that I had been an active part of, right? So for me, all those guilt and shame aspects that came not just from societal and cultural values and ideologies, but also religious ones, those all of that was confirmed in my head that indeed I am a bad person. All my fears about myself, all my suspicions about myself are confirmed. And from that point onwards, there was this constant cycle of I need to make sure that this information doesn't come out. I need to make sure that nobody knows that I did something like this. And I need to make sure that um, nobody sees me as this person, because for me, like my entire image about myself internally was completely tainted forever. It was completely damaged forever in that way. And so I needed to make sure that people did not see the real me. And interestingly, like whenever someone would, from that point onwards, whenever someone would say something good about me, whether it was my teachers, whether it was my friends, whether it was some family members, they would say something nice about me. In my head, there was that instant voice that came in, like, oh, but you don't actually know what I've done. Oh, but you don't actually know the real me. And I know that for a lot of OCD sufferers, whether they've experienced something in their childhood or not, that's aside from that, that voice in your head that's constantly telling you you're a bad person, and that's constantly trying to, that's like in your mind, you're essentially talking to the other person saying that you don't know who I really am. You don't know that I actually am a bad, disgusting, guilty, shameful kind of person that you should not associate with or you should stay away from. Or if you really found out who I was internally, you would not want to talk to me or you would not want to be around me. You would never like me. You would not want to keep me a part of your life. So that was the cycle that was happening over here, because for me that event kind of solidified the guilt and shame. It cemented it quite a bit. And more than that, I was also just completely terrified that I would never be able to forget certain images, certain sensations that I had experienced. So there came that compulsive, like, I need to not think about this. I need to never think about this. I need to never feel anything about this. I need to mentally avoid the thought and avoid certain images, avoid certain sensations that might come in my body. So I need to constantly like um, keep a refresh and keep like a cleaning cycle, like going through, like taking your brain through a car wash constantly, trying to make sure that I did not like think about that particular uh, person, that particular event, those particular images that came to my mind. That's where the mental, that's, I mean, I now realize that that's where the mental compulsions, that was my first, I would say, taste, and that was my first experience with mental compulsions without even knowing, obviously, that I was doing compulsions. For me, it was like, okay, this is the only way I can move on. So I was also kind of constantly trying to distract myself from those internal mental images and those emotions, because I would be feeling mentally and emotionally contaminated as well because of that experience. So if I thought that if I let those thoughts be there, I'd be mentally contaminated. If I let those feelings be there, I'll be permanently emotionally contaminated. So I need to distract myself, think of other things, not let that linger and stuff like that. So um and also this is the first time where my contamination OCD like really kicked in that way. So in my first video I talked about going to the hospital and not feeling great about that, but it was still, I mean, obviously the disgust element was or the that and the unclean element was still there with like hospitals and stuff like that, and but it was still manageable in a way, or it did not feel overwhelming. It did not feel like it was taking over my life. But with now the contamination thing was literally taking over, and if the urge kicked in to do compulsions, I could not think of anything else. I could not budge. Like that would not budge. I would not be able to distract myself or think about anything else. So for me, the contamination OCD focused around dissociating myself from that person, anything that person had touched, anything that person was even remotely associated with, and just in all forms, shapes, and sizes, like mentally, emotionally, physically, dissociating myself from like that person. Is it dissociating or disassociating? I'm not sure. I think that those might be two different words, but you get what I mean. I did not want to associate anything with anything to do with that person, right? So I would not even want to say their name, or anyone else who had the same name. I would not want to say that, and because that would feel like, even just verbally, I would feel like I was verbally getting contaminated. So that's why there was that constant escape. And if I touched something that that person had touched, then I had to wash my hands 2 times. I remember I remember that part quite significantly, because I was going around my house and there were certain things that I knew they had touched, and whenever, I mean, I would touch those things because there was no other way around it. Like for example, if it was like a kitchen cabinet or something like that, so I would touch it, but then after that, immediately I would wash my hands 2 times before I would touch something else. So that's where the contamination OCD, as in the context of being associated with someone bad, started kicking in. But at the same time, it also very soon after started to morph into the fact that any person in my life that I would really strongly dislike, or any person that I just kind of didn't take any sort of liking or admiration to, in a very strong way, or I detested them, or they annoyed me to like beyond measure or something like that, I would just not want to associate with them at all. Like I would not want to be friends with them. I would not want to talk to them, spend time with them. And any time that I would be around such people, it would be like it's a I would feel like I'm doing a disservice to myself by being around such people, because I'm just like wasting my time. My life is getting like completely wasted if I engage with these people my energy is getting wasted and I don't need to do anything. I shouldn't have to do anything with those people. So that kind of like very strong element of avoidance, taking distance, um, and kind of this black and white filter system in my life came in, where I wanted to be like, not this person, only these kind of people, not this kind of behavior, only this kind of behavior, not this kind of personality, only this kind of personality. So it was like a very rigid kind of filter system that I had. Um and I was very and I think I came off at least as very unapologetic about it as well, in a way of like, no, I mean, I just don't want to be around you. I mean, that's not what I said, but that's a vibe that I would clearly give, so that I would push certain people away like that. Um so yeah, I mean, but at the same time, there was also this constant need to um, convince other people that I was a good person, or asking my friends for reassurance that I needed to that they completely did understand my intentions of saying something or doing something, that they did not misunderstand me. So I looked for their validation, their reassurance, and confessed things all the time and over explained myself quite a lot, because I just wanted to make sure there was nothing that was coming in between. In fact, if there was something that was not clarified, or something that would be um, like in the gray area, I would feel like that was also like a contamination form as well. Like if there's something that happened with a friend, or there was an incident where there were certain things that were not resolved perhaps, or there were certain things not communicated or explicitly stated and said, I would feel the need to state them. And that obviously was confessing, but at the same time, through confessing, it was also getting their reassurance, and also getting rid of the contamination that was coming in between the friendship as well. So it was just a very, uh, mm, very strong, overwhelming kind of bubble I would get stuck in with my friends that way. So before I move on, because there are like these other things that I want to touch upon, the important thing I want to highlight over here is about the word trauma. So I also use that word just initially in that video, but it's also really, really important to state how overused that term is, especially nowadays. And it's very easy to label something as trauma, the the further issue with that is, and this is because obviously when I started to work on my mental health and just try to figure out my life, and really start to seek help and stuff like that in my early 20s, obviously I was coming around and I was being exposed to a lot of narratives about trauma and mental health and how it affects you and what people's experiences. And I personally felt like, I mean, obviously having gone through so much material, I feel like the the conversation about trauma is also one which almost portrays that it's kind of this permanent thing in your life, that it's going to permanently alter and affect you, and you will always have this kind of dark cloud over you for the rest of your life, and you will not be able to move on from that. And I believed that for the longest time, and I absolutely was convinced that this is something that's going to stick around for the rest of my life, and I will not be able to be come ever be able to come to a place of acceptance with it. And I would always be in this struggle, and it would be this active kind of wound in my life that I would constantly have to deal with. So, and those kind of narratives are very overpowering, but we also have to kind of clarify how trauma and OCD kind of interact as well. So if you experience something traumatic and it does amplify, or it does kind of instigate your OCD or anxiety, it is most likely because of the fact that you already have pre-existing um, genetic tendencies, and you have pre-existing like genetic makeup that it kind of accentuates, right? So even with my story, if you saw the first part, you would see that there were already pre-existing very conditions of feeling very anxious, wanting reassurance, and I did have OCD. I think even as a child, it was in a milder form, but it was there. And what the traumatic incident do was it kind of like raised the level and sensitized my nerves even further, where I was in this constant state of it. So, like trauma cannot cause OCD particularly, but it it can really accentuate what already exists over there, and it really, I think, also magnifies the irrational beliefs that you even hold as a child. So whether it comes, so for me, for example, there were so many beliefs that I was taking from my socialization, my culture, my religion, all that kind of stuff, and it kind of magnified those really big over my life. And I thought that these are things that I can never escape now, and these are things that rule my entire life. So we have to also be very careful of how we term certain events as trauma or not, and how we also conceptualize trauma itself, because I mean, if it really was just a permanent force in your life that made you this broken person for the rest of your life, and you will never be able to move on from it, or you will never be able to be a fully happy person, and that you can move on but maybe never truly heal, because those are narratives that are in the mental health community just also very problematic as well. And it's very easy to latch onto those narratives and have this perspective about yourself where you are helpless, where you don't have control and power over your own journey or your own life and on your own mental health. There is that narrative of where you will always have this unsaid unconscious influence over you, that's going to be like the driving force behind you. So but you really have to like see those things differently and evaluate the conceptualization of trauma and how it does interact with OCD, and how it does interact with you just as a person and your mental health as well. So I've done a separate video on trauma and OCD as well. If you and that video is just completely about that. So I would say do give that a watch if you want to, and I'll try to link that below in the description as well, so you can go into like further detail with that. So um, yeah, so I mean, so at this point, I was thinking that my past was entirely tainted, and it also made me want to analyze my past more and more and more. By the way, I'll also in the next part, because that comes in the third part of my journey, is where I'll talk about going through trauma therapy, what were my learnings from that, what I took away from that, how how beneficial it was, and where did it stall my OCD and anxiety journey as well. So you'll have to wait for that part to have like a further conversation and a more detailed conversation on that. But obviously, you can ask me questions about it like over here as well, under this video. So um yeah, so for me, I really felt like there was a part of me that wanted to escape the past, but at the same time, I kind of wanted to go into the past, because there was so much uncertainty and so many unanswered questions in my head about it, that I would almost be tempted to sit down and be like, okay, what happened, why it happened, what were my motivations, what were my true intentions, and stuff like that. But then it would be so scary that I would constantly want to focus my attention on like something else completely. So around, I would say, 2009, 10, that's where, like I said, my contamination started to focus on other people, aside from that person, from when I was 14 years old. So it started to focus on anyone that I would kind of despise, and this is where my compulsions related to my phone kind of started to kick in, and again, now I realize that, oh my god, I was doing phone compulsions even then. So I would not want my phone to have text messages from like people in my class, for example, that I really did not like. I would not want their messages to be in my phone. I would not want their contact to be saved in my phone. if I did save their contact, it would not be by their name, it would be by some other kind of coded word or something, or adjective or something like that. um I would always want to keep my like closest friends on speed dial in a way so that they're always on top. I would want to save messages, really important, memorable kind of messages from my friends and stuff like that, so that I can hold on to and cherish those really happy, good moments and not lose sight of them and not lose them from my memory and stuff like that. I would want my phone wallpaper to be of like my friends and me and something like that. Always this, there was this all, and also songs like because those were the times where you transferred songs like to your phone, and there could only be like 20 songs that you could have in your phone, and then your memory would be like, full, so it would always have to be the selective number. And so those songs were also the ones that would always be memorable ones, or songs that were associated with good things in my life, or good people in my life. I would not want, like, so there was this constant sense of keeping away certain contaminations, even like digital contamination in this case, or verbal contamination, or mental or emotional contamination. I would always want to keep things nice, clean, good, nice, happy, feel good, all that. There was again that kind of very rigid filter system in every aspect of my life that way. um, and but this is also where my, with these contamination elements going in the background, I think in like 2010, 2011, our OCD really started to take a front seat, and through these compulsions that I just mentioned, it kind of did, it overlapped with contamination OCD. So I would constantly want to make sure that my friends were not upset with me, or my friends really did still keep liking me if we didn't like talk a lot for 2 days or get to hang out. I want to make sure that, oh, they weren't getting distant from me, they weren't making other closer friends than me, they weren't forgetting about me. That was a massive fear for me, that for some reason I felt like my friends would forget about me. So to um, keep them from forgetting about me, I would constantly make my presence known. I would make the effort to reach out to them or hang out with them, or really want to make plans with them so that we could have more bonding moments, more memories to have, more fun moments. We could just engage more, and I would always just want to have reassurance from them. And at the same time, it was in front of my friends, I would have a massive, massive, massive fear of ever admitting that I had done something wrong. Saying the words "I am wrong" or "I was wrong" were one of the most terrifying things that I thought I could do, or I would have to do, and therefore I kind of became a jerk in a way that when I would make mistakes, I would justify them. So instead of, and try to constantly over explain that, yeah, sure, but like, and I would not say sorry. I would not want to say sorry because that would imply that, oh, I was wrong. Instead, I would, even though I would admit that, like, I would admit in indirect words that yes, I may not have done something ideal, but there would always be a but. I would always launch into this explanation of this justification of, no, but I did this because of this, so that the other person could see that at least even if I messed up, my intentions weren't bad. My intentions weren't still in the right. I was still a good person. I still meant good. I still meant well. And again, I just never wanted to be in the wrong. And at some point, like my friends, I like at least a couple of friends tried to take an issue with it, because they were like, you mess up and then you don't even admit that you've done something wrong. Instead, you justify it even further, and it did start to take like a bit of a toll on my friendships in a way, and like my friendship did face the brunt of it. And so, and that would make me spiral. Like if I had to do if I had done something wrong, it would like get me into the spiral of chronic guilt and shame, and trying to analyze things, trying to figure out how can I justify this, how can I explain myself, how can I keep the other person from disliking me? How can I still make them hold on to their likeness of me? Because I thought if I made a mistake, they would leave me. Then my image about their image about me, their perception of me, their feelings towards me would be permanently tainted and contaminated if I let anything bad come in between us. I would not want any bad energy or presences or any of those things to be there. It would constantly be like, no, I need to explain, I need to make things good and well and fix and fix and fix. And that's also why I was a people pleaser, because I never wanted to upset anyone. I wanted to I had a huge problem saying no to people. I would, even if I might have been exhausted or completely like had a ton of things on my plate and stuff like that, I would not say no to people. It would feel like the most, I felt like I was doing some kind of injustice to them by saying no to them, or I was letting them down and disappointing them. And again, I thought if I disappoint them, they would start thinking badly of me, they would dislike me, and that disappointment would be there forever, and they would never be able to forgive me or move on from that. And again, it just connected, and it was like, oh my god, they must not have even an ounce of dislike for me. So it was a disastrous recipe that I was making for myself, with that reassurance, confessing, validation, all that kind of stuff. Um, this was also a time where I was doing lots of magical thinking compulsions as well. So because in my mind, I think the fear was, even with my ROCD friendships and stuff like that, I think the massive fear was, what if my life spirals out of control? What if um, what if my life gets to a point where nothing is ever the same again? Everything changes, everything falls apart, nothing is the same. I'm never happy, and I can never make things go my way. What if my life reaches that point? That's why I always wanted to be in control of my friendships, in control of what other people thought of me. I wanted constant certainty and reassurance, and I was doing that through magical thinking stuff as well. So, I mean, something like, oh, this morning I saw the time 7:13. Um, so therefore, that must mean that I might have a good day. Because I don't know. Obviously, I mean, I would wake up around the same time and for going to school and stuff like that. So obviously, I would see like similar times on the clock. But 7:13, my mind latched on to like, oh, 7:13, this must be a sign I might have a good day, or this must be a good day, and that's like expectation I would take into my day. um and it was just like these other things with numbers, like, oh, if I see like a sequence like 1 2 3, or like 1 2 4, because one and then double of one is two, and then double of two is four, stuff like that. Like certain patterns in numbers and whatnot, I would almost obsess over them and try to use those as signs, as like, does this mean something, does this not mean something? Then it would also be like, oh, I watched a movie last night where the main female character was talking about, I don't know, a white dress, for example. And then in real life, in school or something, if someone mentioned a white dress, I'd be like, this is like fate coming together or something like that. And then and I would use that as some kind of sign that, oh, this must mean something about my life, something, or that my life has these really nice magical forces going on that kind of automatically take me towards like a good direction. Or on my bad days, I would think, oh my god, these fate is at play right now, and these magical forces are at play right now in my life that are taking them to that are collectively taking my life into a bad direction. So I would be afraid of that. So I would constantly be linking things from here and there. And even I specifically remember this moment where I had a, I don't know, wrapper in my hand for something. I think it was a packet of chips or something, and I was really, I was doubting which dustbin to throw this wrapper in. Like I was almost about to throw it, and then I'd be like, wait, is this the right move? What if I throw the wrapper in this dustbin and something bad happens? What if I need to throw this in the other dustbin? I mean, so magical thinking, and this is just like one, two, three small examples, but there were like a ton of things I was doing in terms of magical thinking where I was just outside of verbally asking people for reassurance or and stuff like that. I was also looking at like superstitious elements as well to be like, oh, where else can I get signs about, is my life going okay? Is my life going good? Will something bad happen? Will my life spiral out of control? Because I would just not want to be in that space of uncertainty where I didn't know where my life was going, and it would bring me like loads of anxiety and paranoia as well. Um, but I mean, little did I know that my worst years of OCD were still ahead of me, which I will go into in part three, because because at this point in my life, school ends and I'm starting college, and that's where OCD went through the roof, absolutely through the roof. But that starts another chapter, so I'll go into that in the next video. Hope you like this one. I'll link the first part in the description if you have any questions. If you want me to cover certain things in the third part, let me know. I'll do that, and let me know how you like this one as well. So this is a long journey we're on. I mean, I don't know. I'll see if the third part is the last one, or maybe I might do a fourth one to be like, oh, where I am now, kind of thing. So it might be a 4-part thing. I don't know. Let's see what happens. See you guys. Take care. Hope you enjoyed this.